Well, good evening and welcome to the Town Hall Get to Know broadcast. We are so pleased that you're joining us this evening. We have a very special guest, actually. This is the second time that Misty Layne has appeared on the Get to Know broadcast, and I am just so pleased to have her back. The first time that we talked was last year, as I recall. At that time, she was had just recently been crowned a third runner-up in the next Impactor, and that's one of the things that attracted me to her. I heard her story. She's such a wonderful person. I am just blessed to call her my friend and to be able to learn and grow with her as we move forward. We are transparent and we talk about what we experienced and share our story in a transparent manner to help people. That's what, of course, the LWN Live with Foundation is about. It's a platform for positive transformational change, and we want to help you become the best person that you can possibly be. And so that's what we do. We try and help people. Let me tell you a little bit about tonight's show. It's going to be a thought provoking story here about overcoming drug addiction, domestic abuse, as well as the fact that Misty was facing a 40-year prison sentence. Almost unimaginable. She went on, though, to become a best selling author, a TV host as well. She's on E360 TV. You can certainly go to that platform and see her show as well. Dare to Share, as I recall, is the name of that show. And yeah, it's just awesome. And so she's a TV host just like us here in the LWN. Now, she's also a public speaker. She's a survivor of domestic violence, and she's got such a great story. So I'm just going to be very pleased to share that with you tonight. She's on a mission about transparency, though. It's a game changer in this world. And after going from medical school to prison for killing somebody in a car accident behind a horrific crack cocaine addiction. She used writing as her way of expressing herself and helped her pull herself up and save her life. 9 years later, that same day the wreck happened, her first grandchild was born with severe brain damage from a birth injury. And she blamed herself for that situation for many years, and she felt toxic, and it was a trigger, I'm sure, for her to maybe think about doing what she had done in the past. And I know for myself, I used drugs and alcohol in the past as a coping mechanism. And so what we do now, though, is we teach how you can use new coping mechanisms to be able to overcome the obstacles that you might be facing in your life, and to break through those barriers that were holding us back at one point and go on to have a very successful life. Now, she just wrote a book and it was a bestseller as well. That bestseller is, let me be that one. No, the book is What Goes Up. So, yes, What Goes Up. And so, without really any further ado, I would love to bring Misty Layne into the studio.
Hi, Stephen.
Well, hello, Misty. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Excellent. Welcome to the Town Hall Get to Know broadcast. I'm so pleased that you're here this evening. You're such a dynamic individual, beautiful woman, and
Thank you.
have, wow, a story that's just like, oh my goodness. You were a beauty queen, as I
Yeah.
recall. A beauty queen and had life going pretty good for you, right?
Yeah. I was on top of the world. I actually had gotten a lot of scholarship money through the Texas pageant system. And that's why I kind of stayed with it because you win, scholarship money. So I knew I wanted to be a surgeon early on. So I kind of used that beauty pageant system to help me fund that college career.
Well, you're in the medical field to this day as
I
a
am.
result. Yeah, yeah.
It's a
Well,
blessing. I barely am because I almost lost my license, and that's another story. But
oh,
a
well,
lot of blessings in my story.
we'll have to have you back on a health and wellness broadcast then and talk about that part of it,
Yeah.
because I know that you help a lot of people, obviously, in the healthcare industry, as well as from a personal standpoint. So maybe you can tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, give them a little bit of background on you, Misty.
You want me to go into my full story, or just a quick background about?
Well, just do whatever feels like the right thing to do here. You've got a great story. It's an overcomer story. I
Yeah.
know that you and I are on the same kind of a plane. We can relate to the fact that, we did drugs and, I was doing alcohol primarily, but whatever, a coping mechanism, and spent a lot of days in not my right mind for real. And that
We
gets us places.
we want the
Yeah.
big picture, Misty.
Okay, we
Okay,
want
well,
the
I'll go.
big
I'll do
picture.
it then. It's
Okay.
it's so odd to hear, someone read your bio before a show, because knowing my life today as a survivor, now that I've been through all that, you know, to hear it, it sounds horrible, and to see me today, it's like, wait, this doesn't match up. But
Right?
we all have those ups and downs in our lives, Stephen. As you know, everyone is going to
Yeah.
experience life to whatever level it gets them. Um, I was in nowhere prepared for what I was blindsided with. But I just want to start out before I even share my story that um, I had to learn to take accountability for all of my actions. I used to blame everyone else for everything that happened to me. And I had to learn that I had culpability in it. And once I surrendered to that, I could start forgiving myself. And that's kind of when the journey began for the healing. But I'll go back and talk a little bit about how I got to that point. Like I said, I always knew I wanted to be a surgeon. I was in school studying, got married young, got married at 19, had my first baby at 20. So I'm going through college, married with a child and just ticking away, ticking away. Nothing was going to stop me no matter what. I had another child, my second daughter, still going to school. Finally, I had gotten my undergrad in chemistry, and I also got in a degree in nuclear medicine. I was anticipating it taking a few years to get into medical school, so I went ahead and had that career path. I did get into medical school. Right after I got in, I found out my husband of 10 years had a woman pregnant, and it just devastated me. It just completely blindsided me. I was very naive, and I was a very confident, the pageant system had made me very confident. And I realized that that confidence had a lot of power with it. But when that happened to me, I internalized all of that and thought he cheated because I wasn't good enough. I didn't measure up. Something must have been wrong with Misty for him to have to go cheat. So that started a really, the bigger picture is that was the downward spiral right there of me. I started getting low self-esteem. I became really vulnerable. I started dating anyone that gave me the attention I was starving for, that validation. I ended up with someone that introduced me to cocaine for the first time in my life at age 32. So I was a mother of two, studying to be a surgeon. And one day on the side of the road on the way to a Dallas Cowboys football game, he pulled out a line of Coke and said, try it. And I'm like, no way, I don't do drugs. And he's like, just try it. And I didn't give that moment of choice the respect it deserved. I didn't think it through to the end. I was in a place of vulnerability. I was in a place of anger. And I thought for a second, I did everything right and it got me here. So screw that. I'm going to see what being bad does for me. And I wanted to be bad. Like I wanted to be that deceptive person. And so I tried it. And you hear people say you get addicted instantly. For Coke, it wasn't so much that. Now, when I progressed to crack cocaine, that was absolutely an instant addiction. But Coke, I could manage a little bit. I started it, and it wasn't the drug, even the high that it gave me, that I think I was addicted to. I believe what addicted me is that escape that the drug gave my mind. It gave my mind a place where adultery didn't matter. It gave my mind a place where perfectionism didn't matter. Didn't matter how I looked. Didn't matter what kind of job I had. It didn't matter, that my husband had cheated on me. It just took all of that away. And so my mind could just be at peace. And that is what I got addicted to, that peaceful feeling. So that went on for several months. And then I got introduced to crack cocaine. That was the devil. They call it the devil's candy, and I'm telling you, it is the devil's candy. I'd never smoked cigarettes, so I had a hard time even learning how to inhale it. And being the perfectionist that I am, the minute I inhaled it, I got the technique down. I was full blown crack addict, just full blown.
It's bad
Yeah,
stuff.
and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Um, so then I fell in love with my drug dealer. So I thought I was in
Really?
love with him. Yeah. Yeah, that's Austin, my son's dad. And
Uh-huh.
he's the one that he broke my nose for the first time, punched me for the first time in the face. I had never been around domestic abuse, never, in all transparency, because that is my platform, I will say, because I know that I'm not alone in this. I would see women with black eyes and I would judge them, and not intentionally, but I would think to myself, how stupid is she? She's got to know that's not love, right?
Mhm.
And until you're in that position, you just don't know. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know what it is. But I became this small, Stephen, this small. I went from being
Yeah.
this career oriented,
Yeah.
confident woman to feeling like I wanted to hide because his words embarrassed me in public. The bruises embarrassed me in public. I was scared of him. So, what happens with domestic abuse is the abuser finds every insecurity you have and they just play on it. And when you're vulnerable and you allow those insecurities to be seen, you're open game. It's like hunting season,
Mhm.
And it was the
Very
right time.
manipulative is what I'm hearing. Very
What?
manipulative.
Oh my gosh, very manipulative. And it progresses. Like it didn't come on really sudden. Some of the behaviors did. Now, the first time he hit me, that was sudden. But like some of the other behaviors leading up to that, I didn't take them for full value. But when I look back and put it all together, the slow control. It got to the point where I couldn't even take my own vehicle with my kids and go to Walmart. He controlled everything I
Wow.
did, and it wasn't until years later that prison separated us, that I had that physical separation long enough to realize I didn't even know what kind of food I liked or what kind of music I enjoyed, because he dictated everything. He dictated how I dressed every day. And what makes me the angriest is that I allowed it. I allowed it, but he was
Right.
using that cocaine. See, he would hit me, I would
Yep.
kick him out. He would come back later that night with coke, and that would be my pain reliever for the busted eye or the broken nose.
Right.
So
Right.
it was such a cycle, such a cycle. And I tried, I moved states, I went into hiding. He always found me. He used scripture against me to get me back in. I always gave him a chance, God changed him, all these things. But long story short, we did get separated because we were out doing drugs and writing hot checks and running stolen credit cards and everything. I mean, not looking your stereotypical. I mean, I still have my teeth, I'm a Texas beauty queen, so I'm gonna have some kind of lip
Yeah.
gloss on my lips, no matter how tore up from the floor up I am, right? So I
Okay.
could write a stolen check and I didn't really get questioned so much. I could get away with it. But what that did, Stephen, is it dug a huge judicial hole for myself. It just let me
Yeah.
get deeper and deeper into it with more charges and more charges. At one point, the state of Texas was following us and building a case. We wrote over $10,000 worth of hot checks
Oh boy.
it was on one of my old closed checking accounts. So
Uh,
I didn't
yeah.
go to jail for forgery because it was my account, but the account was closed. I ended up turning myself in on that case after I got out of rehab, and turned myself in and made restitution. But anyway, so it was really, really bad out there. I did those things I said I would
Well,
never do.
yeah, I
Hmm?
mean, things can happen like that, and I know the vicious circle of once you're involved in the drugs and then you use it to take yourself back out. Um,
Mm-mm.
you know, it's really hard to step out of that. That's not an easy deal.
It's hard. It's almost impossible. I was told one time in rehab that only 3% of the drug addicts would make it on the other side of addiction. I eventually made it to be a 3%er, and I'm really proud of that. But it took a lot. You know, I did
Well,
a lot of things.
so, you found yourself high one night. You were, I don't know what was really going on, but the point is that it led to waking up in the hospital. and recognizing that what's going on here. Maybe you can
Yeah.
tell us about that.
Yeah, it actually happened one morning. I had picked up these two prostitutes to score some drugs for me, and they decided they were going to try to steal my car. Punched me in the face, jumped out of the car. I turned the car around to try to get out the only way I knew in, down the same road. They threw something at me. I swerved, started sliding sideways down the road. I actually hit a parked vehicle in a driveway, which in turn hit a lady that had been standing in her yard, knocked her under the house, and killed her. I had no idea. I never saw her standing there. Couldn't have stopped my car if I had. And I was very high. Been up for 4 nights straight. I was high
Oh,
as a kite. So
right.
um, I actually woke up in the ER with my mom over me, just sobbing. And I remember telling her I knew I was in a wreck. I remembered that much, and I said, Mom, I'm
Mhm.
okay. And I went to reach up to hug my mom to console her that I was okay. And I felt
Mhm.
that cold, angry steel around my wrist. And I'm like, what on earth has happened? And she's like, don't you know? And my own mother, Stephen, had to tell me I killed someone. And it was like that gurney turned into quicksand, and I just
Yeah.
was engulfed, and it sucked all the air out of my lungs because at that moment I felt guilty that I lived and she didn't, because I was in the wrong. I was out there doing stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing. So
Mhm.
um and then they threw me in jail with the two girls that assaulted me, but they didn't even get charged. They were in on prostitution warrants.
Oh my
um
goodness.
but I ended up getting one of them to Jesus. I ended up helping her get her GED. Um, and she's since overdosed and passed away. But the other little
Oh,
girl
that's
never showed any remorse at all.
and that's a terrible thing, and I know that that's a very tough thing for you to share, and what I wanna say is that I'm so proud of you to be able to share a story like that. A lot of people couldn't, and then they would let it eat them up. Would you say that by being transparent, was part of that healing process? And you talked about writing a lot, and so you were writing about this, and then that helped you to heal?
Absolutely. And, I did start the healing before the transparency came into play. It was more about being ashamed and the judgmental part of it. I actually wrote my story in jail. I was waiting on a 40-year sentence. I was waiting to go to trial. And that was the only therapy I had. They didn't get me any help or anything. I didn't have to see a doctor. I didn't have any antidepressants. So I just used writing as my outlet.
Mhm.
And long story short, I did not get the 40 years. They reduced my sentence to negligent homicide, accidental, which is what saved my medical license in nuclear medicine. And I got 5 years. So I did 2.5 actual time and the rest on paper. So when I
Okay.
got out, I started rebuilding my life, rebuilding my
Yeah.
relationships. Fortunate and blessed that I could still practice nuclear medicine to rebuild my life. But even that was hard because, when you have a bunch of felonies on your record, nobody wants to hire you. So
Right.
I had to wait that time out. It was really humbling for me. There was a point I worked at Taco Cabana, which is some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. Um, cooking at a fast food restaurant just to
Right.
make the only people that would hire me, and I applied for a manager position at a roller rink. Nobody would hire me because I was overqualified. So it took
Yeah.
some time, and it was very humbling to get back into the nuclear medicine world and build that respect and trust up with my name again. To even,
Mhm.
now I'm extremely desired. People want me all the time, so I'm very blessed. But that 9-year period that was going on, I never released my book. I had built new relationships, and I didn't want those people to know this horrible person in the past. I was ashamed of that person. Um, and like you mentioned in the intro, my
Mhm.
grandbaby was born on
Yes,
September 18th, which is the
and I
same
remember that.
exact day that the wreck happened, September 18th. So I instantly
Ah,
thought when she came out with that birth injury and oxygen deprivation, she got stuck in the birth canal, came out blind and deaf. She couldn't
yeah.
suck, couldn't cry, had a feeding tube, just tons of issues. I instantly blamed myself, Stephen, and I thought there is just no way that date is a coincidence. This is my punishment. And at that moment, is when like I felt the disconnect. Like I felt that guilt was robbing me of enjoying her, because when I held her I felt guilty. And that's when I realized I was letting my past rob me of my future, and that there must be millions of other people out there doing the same thing. So
Hmm.
I dug down deep inside and I thought, I remembered about that 3%. Them telling us, and I'm standing there 9 years clean and sober, that I was a 3%er, that I must have lived through that crap for a reason. God
Hmm.
spared me for something other than to just wallow in shame and guilt, right? So I took that book that I had written, which was dark with anger and blame, and I rewrote it out of accountability and forgiveness, and decided to come forward and release it. And it's changed my life. And right after is when I met Jason Cisneros, who was my mentor, and he taught me and showed me what transparency meant and what it would do for someone. And that's when I just decided I don't care anymore. If people want to judge me when I tell my story on a stage, let them judge me. But I just wanted to get out of the way so the people behind them can hear it, because somebody out there needs to hear this story. We're not alone. None of us are alone in the things we've been through, no matter how
Right.
bad they are. There's always other people out there that are sharing the same pain. And I feel like transparency is that game changer that's going to help us not feel alone, and talk about it more, and seek other ways around it.
Well, I think for me, speaking for myself, the
Mhm.
transparency came when I decided that I wasn't going to allow other people's judgment of me to be or own other people's judgment of me
Yeah,
versus what I recognized that I was, which is a child of God, and that we are forgiven. And so when I decided it's not important what other people, if other people are going to put me down for the mistakes and the bad choices that I've made in my life and the bad things that happened as a result of it, well, then that's going to be their problem, not my problem. And so I'm not afraid anymore of sharing my story. And I think, would you say that that's part of it? Would that be like a huge breakthrough once you're willing to share some of this deep, dark, quote, secrets, because the secrets tear you up when you keep them secret?
absolutely. I think you have to dump that toxic shame and guilt. And I think that that's the first step, even before self forgiveness, because until you are honest with yourself and take that accountability for it, for your part in it, you can't begin to heal. You can't even ask yourself to forgive yourself, because you haven't even acknowledged that you've done something. And I
Right.
think taking ownership of it is that first step, but then transparency comes into play, and we start sharing our story so that we can ease the pain and suffering for someone else. And I think
Exactly.
it took time. I mean, people tell us all the time to do it, but they don't really tell us how to do it. And it's just a process we have to go through. We have to put the
Right.
work in, we have to do it. For me, it was using writing to discover all the things that I had pain. Like, for instance, during my addiction, Stephen, I had three abortions, and I
Mhm.
never grieved those babies. I took a hit. I went in and had the abortion. My boyfriend picked me up outside, had the crack pipe
Mhm.
loaded, took another hit, and just buried it, buried it, buried
Yeah.
it, buried it. Never
Oh, I
allowed myself the time and space to heal.
yeah, and I know what that's like. I do. I know exactly what that's like, because I've been there on that pipe, and boy, I just when I think about back about it, it's scary. Really,
It
it's
is
like
scary.
wow, because I mean that stuff is so powerful. It makes you feel so good for a moment, But then the fact is that we end up still being living with ourselves and having to deal with it, and you know, what would you yeah, I mean, it is about facing reality, I guess, and just like you said, being honest with yourself and forgiving yourself.
Mhm.
That's so critically important. And you now, if I correct me if I'm wrong, you have a course and you help people with writing for healing. Am I correct about that?
Well, my course is being developed. I don't have an actual
Okay.
online course, but in my book, there's a chapter called Cope Equals Hope, which is a
Okay.
four-step method.
Okay.
Confront,
So that's your
yeah,
4-step method.
a four-step Cope Equals Hope. Confront your fears, optimize your experience, push through the pain and guilt, and embrace the person you are on the other side. So that's the four-step method. And then I am doing Right to Ignite Women's Empowerment Retreats, which is a 3-day, very intimate type setting when COVID's lifted.
Right.
Women's retreats where we do some ugly crying around a campfire. We use art therapy, we journal, all about learning how to use writing as that tool to release that toxic shame and guilt.
That's awesome. That
Yeah,
sounds really exciting. It sounds like you've got some great things on the horizon. That's for
yeah,
sure. I'm excited about that,
that's
for
my
you for
biggest
sure.
thing. I think, I've always been, my platform has been transparency ever since I decided to do it myself. And I experienced that freedom it gave me. So I knew right then and
Yeah.
there, that's what I needed to promote. Um, so that's how the hashtag Be That One movement came about. My Facebook group, hashtag Be That One.
Yeah.
It encourages people to step up and share their raw truth and transparency, to educate and make others aware so that we can judge less and mentor more. Well, with that, I thought, well, okay, now that I've told them to do it, how do they do it? So that's when my talk show, Dare to Share with Misty Layne, came about, because that
Okay.
provides the platform for people to step up and be that one. So
Yeah.
that's great. But I feel in my heart the biggest work, where the biggest benefit's going to be, is those retreats where I can get in there one on one with these women, work
Mhm.
alongside them, and watch them transform over that 3-day weekend. I think that's going to be my biggest gift, I guess, to the world.
Okay,
And I'm
yeah. Well,
excited
I
for
mean, you're already a gift to the
that.
world because God kept you here, okay? And you touched many, many people. And as a matter of fact, you were involved in a competition last year, and that's how I came to know you, was through that competition that inspired me so awesomely too as well, about just getting out there and putting yourself out there and volunteering for nonprofit foundations and giving of yourself. Hopefully, if I'm recalling what you said, I know I had to close my eyes and think about this, but I share and dang it, I'm not going to get it exactly, but it was so important, about sharing with other people. Your challenge with the Be That One group. Um,
Step up and be that one and share your truth to make others aware and to educate, so we can judge
right.
less and mentor more.
Judge less and mentor more.
Mentor
That's what
more.
it
Yeah.
was. Thank you for repeating that. Okay.
Yes.
Because I think that that is so critical. Judge less. We need
Mentor
to
more.
stop being so opinionated about other people and actually just try and help them and share with them what we know, especially these days, right? Misty,
Right.
things are, you know, quite
Scary
divisive, I guess
times.
would be the word I think I might just choose. I mean, seems like people are having opportunity with COVID to nurture relationships, and yet relationships are going sideways as a result of it.
There's a lot of depression that's setting in, a lot of financial struggles, and spouses tend to turn on each other in financial times,
Mhm.
struggles. I'm the vice president of Chemo Buddies for Life, also that nonprofit. We
Right.
do a lot of work in that community around the depression aspect of it. And that's why I feel transparency is a game changer in the world, because you think about, let's just talk for a minute about suicide rates.
Yeah.
All the people that commit suicide because they feel alone, they feel isolated. Sometimes we've seen studies where they felt like they were monsters because of the thoughts they had. Well, if more of us would step up and share authentically the
Hmm.
thoughts we have, the normal everyday stuff we go through that we think is so horrible, we'll know that we're not alone in those thoughts, that we're not monsters. It's just thoughts. And maybe
Right.
we have a chemical imbalance and we can treat it. And I think
Hmm.
it would save people's lives. I think the suicide rate would decline. Um, a quick example of that, I
Yeah.
remember going, when I went to prison, there were, man, Stephen, there's stories. I'm telling you, there's stories deep down in my heart right now that just, I've come to terms with them. They hurt just to know that I've done the things I've done out there, and I felt like a monster. I felt like I was just the most horrible person on earth. When I went to prison and was there long enough to gain trust with a few different women, where we
Hmm.
trusted each other enough to share transparently, I
Mhm.
realized that they had done those things too. And it made me realize it wasn't Misty that was so bad. It was what the drugs were making Misty do. And
Right.
it somehow made it better for me. It somehow lifted that because I didn't want to live. I wasn't suicidal, but I felt guilty for being alive. How could I have do these horrible things out there and still be able to walk around? I mean, it's not fair, right? So sharing them makes us see that we're not alone. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying there because I was always my own worst critic,
Yeah.
and so I could use all the examples of the things that I had done wrong and how I had hurt people and done some of the things that I had done in an effort to, well, get high or be drunk, and not be accountable to my job and family and kids and all that stuff. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's easy to go to, I don't want to live. This sucks. I'm terrible. The world's going to be better off without me. But the fact
Yeah,
of the matter is, so many others have experienced and felt the same stuff, and they're just thoughts, because what I recognized, and maybe you'll speak to this, I felt that in the end it was the drug really truly wanted me dead.
oh, yeah.
That's what it wanted. And so
That's
it had such a powerful grip that I was believing it. And if you can step away for a while, you can recognize that in fact we're not supposed to be dead, we're supposed to be alive and love. Was
mhm.
talking with a gentleman that to as well, Coach Chuck, today,
Yeah,
and I just love Coach Chuck. He's been on the Get to Know show as well, and he's talking about how important it is right now for us to let people know that we really are love and that we love others whether we even know them or not. We want to try and help them, right?
that's right.
And
That's
give
right.
them some reassurance that what, things can get better. And I got to get out of the habit of saying this. Is like, I don't mean to hurt somebody's feelings, but it's like it takes action, and takes stop feeling sorry for yourself and self pity. At least that's what I felt for me. You know,
It does.
stop
It does,
being
but you gotta
a
get to
pity
that point.
party.
Yeah,
But
I think you gotta get to that point first to do the action. I think we have to get our head in that space to be able to do the action.
now, okay? So you talked about writing. You're talking about art. What are some other things that people can do so that they can try and pull themselves out and recognize that their life is valuable, and that they can go on to do great things just like you have?
Well, I can tell you what started it for me. Is actually I have to give the credit to my oldest daughter, Lauren. When I was in county jail waiting on my trial, she sent me a letter. She said, "Mom, you have to forgive yourself. That wreck was an accident. Quit beating yourself up." She
Yeah.
said, "I want you to write everything down on a piece of paper that keeps you awake at night, that you're beating yourself up over. Write everything down, pray about it, give it to God, ask Him for forgiveness, and get rid of it." So I took my daughter's advice and I did. And I took 3 pages front and back, and it took me several days, and I wrote everything down. And I prayed over it and I flushed it down the toilet. I ripped it up in tiny pieces, flushed it down the
Mm.
toilet because you can't trust anything going in the trash in jail. So, because they'll use
Right.
it against you somewhere.
Right.
So,
Right.
but what that did is it allowed that wall of shame that Misty had to just lower just enough to where I could see inside all that pain that I had. All those little Debbie cakes, all the crack cocaine, all the makeup, all the things that I was using to stuff down the pain, to hide
Mhm.
the pain that I felt.
Mhm.
That pain needed to be addressed. So once I was
Mhm.
able to dump that toxic shame and guilt enough, I could start addressing those pain points and those limiting beliefs. And that's where the writing came in. And I actually designed, and I'd love to offer your audience a
Mhm.
free gift today. I've actually
Oh,
designed something around that called the Toxic Dump Guide. And it's just a writing exercise that I'd love to give your audience if they want one.
that's awesome.
It's
Let
a
me
writing.
just, is that to your website there?
They can email me at mistylayne@mistylayne.com. And in the subject line, put the word toxic dump, and I will
Okay,
get
there we
that right
go.
out to them.
I've got the website there. And so can they do that through the website or they just email you, you saying?
They just email me, Misty, Mistie Lane, Layne at mistylayne.com, and put
Awesome.
the words toxic dump in the subject line, and I'll
There you
send
go.
you out a digital copy of the toxic dump guide.
That is so awesome. So thank you very much for doing that for the viewers. And so
Absolutely.
yes, if you're hearing this, just reach out to Misty, and she's there to help you and give you some information that can be very helpful for you. Did you in prison find were you doing classes or anything, or were you just sitting in a jail cell and this stuff like came to you because of course you had a lot of time to think?
Well, you do have a lot of time to think, but that can be good for you, and it can also be really bad for you at the same
Yeah.
time. You've heard that expression, you got to get in where you can fit in. It was really hard for me because I, once I started doing the drugs and I was running away from home 3 and 4 days at a time, my friends that I'd known, all my college friends, that were dear to me, we didn't have a common interest anymore. So I didn't fit in with them. I didn't fit in jail because most people in jail aren't educated in medical school. So, I didn't really fit in. Like I felt like I was trapped between
Well,
these two places. And
I think you were still you even though you were doing some stuff that wasn't, necessarily great, but you're still a good girl, you know?
well,
You
yeah, yeah. I
you
was
you
raised with
really
good
were.
morals and values, which is what saved me. But so
Right.
what I did, and it's kind of really, you know, prison's scary if you've never been. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, I know.
I was afraid, especially in the beginning. I was getting in the jail. I was getting death threats because I killed this lady.
Yeah,
I was hearing people were going to come in and give me a hot shot, which is a shot of heroin to kill
yeah.
me. I would sleep in a ball as far away from those bars, as far away from arm's reach, because I was afraid of for my life. So what I started doing, and just kind of came natural to me, is I started teaching the girls um, coursework, and they actually let me develop a GED program and brought
Ah,
the books in for me. So in prison, when I went to prison, I actually developed a GED program and taught all the GED classes. So, I
wow.
mean, if you're a girl, let's say you're a big 6 foot bully, corn fed girl from the country, and you're this close to getting your GED, you're going to protect your teacher, right? So nobody
Yeah.
gonna mess with the teacher. So that was kind of my way to fit in, and it was kind of served as protection for me. People didn't want to hurt me because they needed me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
provided something. Yeah,
So you've always been an educator then, it sounds like.
I think it just kind of comes natural. Yeah, I've always loved to teach. I just,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome. Well, tell us, okay, you're involved in nuclear medicine. Can you tell us about that? What are you doing in that area?
Nuclear medicine is we inject radioactive isotopes into the body and look for all different types of anomalies. So it's all about function, not just does your gallbladder have a gallstone in it and how is it enlarged or not, but is it working? And if it is, how efficiently does it work? So we know if we need to remove it. That transplant renogram, someone got a new kidney, and yeah, it matches, their blood type matches, but if that blood flow doesn't go from the heart to that renal artery within 3 seconds, we know over time it's going to necrose and die. So we provide all those functional tests for the body by using radiation. It's really, really cool stuff. And
And
also
you're
do PET
yeah.
CTs for cancer too.
Okay. And that's is that down in Beaumont area? Is that where that is that you're involved or no? Why
I'm
was
down
I
in the
thinking
Beaumont,
Beaumont?
Port Arthur area. I'm
Yeah.
licensed in 5 different states. I do travel one weekend a month. I travel all over the place, and I work doing the mobile unit for on call for cancer for PET CTs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. So you're doing your part in the healthcare industry as well. We definitely need to bring you back on one of the health and wellness shows that I do as that would be good. I love this stuff because I get educated. That's a beautiful thing. And that's why we're doing this show, everybody. Is it's Misty has quite a story, it's a tragic story. Uh, but she's an example of how you can overcome this stuff. and you
Absolutely.
can actually go on to be on TV, to be able to influence a lot of people. And I think I was going there a minute ago, but we met with the Next Impactor. Tell us about the Next Impactor and how that influenced your life, and how that made a difference to you.
The next impactor was a 9 month long journey. It's like giving birth to a child. I mean, it was 9 months, it was a long time. But I tell you what, it was such a journey of self discovery. It was such a journey of learning to put your ego to the side and learn about your true purpose and discover it naturally and organically. Um, I grew so much as a person during that competition. I learned so much from so many people. I had so many beautiful, just service driven people out there. A whole world I never even knew existed, Stephen. And
Mm, mm, mm.
I'm very proud, very, very proud of
Yeah.
that whole endeavor.
Well,
Yeah.
and a third runner up. I
Yeah.
mean, I voted for you, and
Oh, thank you.
but I love Tamara too. Let's not get this wrong.
Thank you. It was,
But yeah, that was such a, and I mentioned Coach Chuck, and he
yeah.
was in the top 25, and I met so many dynamic people, Lauren Harris and Jason Cisneros, and just so many others that it made even though I wasn't involved in it, it made a huge impact in my life too. Just because of that message of getting out there and doing something for people, it really is important now. And you know that Tamara and Chemo Buddies for Life is dear to my heart. So why don't you talk a little bit and share about Chemo Buddies with the audience?
Well, Tamara had done an interview. She interviewed me one day, and we didn't know each other. And the whole interview, still didn't know anything. We were talking about my story, weren't talking about my career. After the Zoom was over, you stay behind and chat a little bit. And I said, well, Tamara, I do PET CTs, which are the standard test for cancer. She's like, what? I didn't know that. And I'm like, so it started, we just bonded immediately. So I've always had this
Mhm,
passion to help. I've never had cancer. No one in my immediate family's ever had cancer, but
mhm,
some relatives, but not me immediately. But I have
mhm.
always had a passion because I work with those patients. I see the same patient every 6 months. I'll watch them either get better or get worse. I mean, I'm right there with them. So I've always had an affinity for it. And I told her we were running against each other in that competition, neck
Mhm.
and neck. If you
Right.
remember, neck and neck.
I do remember.
But I always told her, I said, Tamara, if I don't win, I hope it's you. And no matter what, when this is over, I'm going to be on board with Chemo Buddies. And so
Yeah.
I came on board and I started, I think, as secretary or something. I don't even remember what. But anyway, right afterwards, I mean, it was instantly, she's like, no, you need to be my vice president. So I serve as the vice president on the board, not as active as I should be after, my grandbaby passed away in January.
Yeah.
We've been hit with 2 hurricanes. I've had a lot of stuff happen
Yeah.
this year,
I
so I
was gonna
haven't been as
say,
active, but,
even even recently, you had to go through losing your grandbaby, which was a horrible situation. And God bless your grandchild and your kids and your daughter, and yourself. That was a tough spot for real. Um, but you went through that, and that's all within the last like year or two, right? And a couple hurricanes and a huge fire down the street and all this stuff.
everything's happened. It's been crazy, but the thing I have to say, I have to take my own advice, is that when we feel like we have it really bad and we're so down, we all we have to do is look around. There's always people that have it worse. And like going back to what you said right before we talked about Chemo Buddies, is I had to learn, Stephen, that the way I lifted myself up was to lift someone else up. That's learning about service. It just like made the difference for me, because you hear when you grow up in church to give tithe, and it comes back to you, all your
Mhm.
tithes come back to you. And when you're younger, if you're like, yeah, right, that's not going to come back to me, but it does in such a way. Like when I help someone else, it just automatically helps me, because now I feel like I'm valuable. Now I see the what I'm worth, just not to other people and myself, and why God saved me. And it just makes it all better somehow. It takes the attention off of me. The
Yeah.
Because like you said, we beat ourselves up. We're our worst critic.
Yeah.
We
I
beat
was.
ourselves up for our mistakes. So
Yeah.
instead of taking that negative energy and dwelling on ourselves, it allowed me to put positive energy somewhere else. And it was a great shift.
So how do you do this positive energy? Do you have a routine then that you use that you stick to about positivity? How do you reinforce this and release the negative thoughts? Because I think we're all human. Negative thoughts can come to us. It's a
I
matter
think
of
we
just
have to learn. I think it's nature for us to go straight to the negative, especially in society today. Everything's about judgment and ridicule. And I
yep.
think you have to learn to see the positive. And for me, it's about realizing that there's a silver lining in every situation, and finding what that is. And that's what I focus on. Um, with Eliana passing away in January, that was the horrific pain. It was painful. They had to let her go. She died in
Hmm.
my daughter's arms, and it was horrible to watch. But
Yeah.
looking back now, what the positive in that was. She passed away January 11th, right before COVID came. She was a respiratory child. It would have been hell for my daughter to try to keep her safe and well during COVID. It would have been horrible.
Hmm.
The tree fell in the house right where she sat in her little pea pod area. Um, that tree could have fallen on her. I mean, you have to find the positive in
Yeah.
everything. When I
I love
killed,
that.
you don't think, you think, oh my gosh, what could be positive out of that, right?
Yeah.
Several things were positive. It saved my
Yeah.
life, number one. Not that we traded
Yeah.
life, but the big twist to my story. A lady came into my jail cell one night, Stephen, crying. She was drunk. They put her in the cell with me. I stayed up. I gave her a t-shirt to wear, gave her some food. We stayed up talking a couple hours. She was drunk. She was just going on and on about her wife. Her wife had cancer. She was sick. She was suicidal because she was in a lot of pain, but she had died recently. And she was sad because she was dead, but she was glad because she was suicidal and in pain. I didn't think anything of it, went to bed. The next day, woke up, bars opened up. We went to breakfast. Everybody's pointing at us, whispering. Somebody hollers out, "That's the bitch that killed your wife." And she looked at me. She's like, "You killed her?" And I looked at her. I said, "She had cancer." And she's like, "But you're a nice lady." I'm like, "She had cancer. She was suicidal." So what that did was, and that was God, by the way, because she should have
Hmm.
never been allowed in my unit, number one, much less in my personal jail cell. She came in the middle of the night. Nobody was awake to tell her who I was. So there was no prejudgment. She got to know me. So the word on the street from those two girls was I ran that lady down in a drug deal because they didn't want to go to jail. They didn't want to say they caused me to have a wreck. So she's thinking all this time her wife had gotten involved in drugs and was some big drug dealer. So what this did was this allowed her closure to know the truth. And what it did for me, Stephen, was
Wow.
I was so down. Every breath I took felt borrowed, like I was guilty for the breath. So, what it did for me, my Christian upbringing was that I was taught if you commit suicide, your soul doesn't go to heaven. So, for that moment, knowing she was suicidal, there was my silver lining. I said, "Misty, you just saved her soul. You know she's in heaven." And it gave me one tiny
Mm.
sliver, one thing, Stephen, that I could wake up every day and there was hope again. There was something I could feel good about. And that's what I built on every day. And every day I made myself get up, and every day I found something new that I could love about Misty again. And whether it be a joke I told that made somebody laugh, I said, okay, for today, I'm loving myself for making somebody else laugh. Whether it be loving my teeth or my hair or my freckles or whatever, or knowing a poem or whatever it is. I had to find something every single day, even in that tiny little jail cell, that I could be grateful for. And I built on it and built on it and built on it. And then when I got better, I remembered where I had been, and I remembered to always reach out and help the people that didn't have it as good as me.
That is an incredible story. I had not heard that, and that's
Oh, yeah.
really something. And you triggered something in my mind about an experience that I had when I was sitting in jail too. But God does these things to let us know that there was some good in even the worst of what might have happened, even most respectfully as to how we react, or I prefer respond to a situation that might be faced with us like that. So awesome.
Well,
Um,
absolutely. I say all the time, everything I drug my kids through, all that 10 years of crap I drug my kids through, Stephen, it has made them strong, resilient, independent. I mean, my kids are amazing. And my daughter, she had a baby that was born blind and deaf with all kinds of special needs. And I believe in my heart God was grooming her for that. She was strong because of the stuff I put her through. She knew nothing about. She didn't know how to be weak. She always had to be strong her whole life. So she was ready for Eliana when she came. And I think that
yeah,
a lot of us don't. We don't open our minds to see the positive stuff around us. And that's where we're at fault. We've got to start retraining our brain to look for those beautiful stories, to look for the positive stuff, and focus our attention there instead of dwelling on the imperfections.
I agree. I agree
Yeah.
that wherever there is seemingly bad, there is good to be had there. We have to look for that good. And where there's good, there's bad. And that's the wholeness of how things are. And so it's a matter then of how we look at it perspective wise. And I think you've made some good points. It's about practicing, and it's about repetition, and it is about routine, and just practicing. The more we try and stay positive, even if you're relying to I'm happy, but I'm sad. But keep on
Yeah.
telling yourself happy. Go take a walk in nature. Just do something that makes you feel good, and even smile. And all of a sudden, the neurochemicals are being released. You're stimulating happiness. Laughter is so great, so awesome.
Oh, it is.
We
And
have a
when you,
few minutes. Go ahead. I was going to say
I
we
was
have a
gonna
few
say,
minutes
when you
left.
found
I want you to
me.
share and tell people about your book, and remind them about the fact that they can get this toxic dump.
Okay. So my book is What Goes Up. You can get it at mistylayne.com for a signed copy, or you can go on Amazon or Walmart, Target, any of the bookstores. They all have it, and you can order it there. That four-step guide is in there. There's lots of great. It's not just a book. At the end of every chapter, I actually give life application skills. So I think it really can help you if you're dealing with a lot of insecurity and things like that. Um, my show, Talk a Dare to Share with Misty Layne, airs on e360tv.com every Tuesday and Thursday night at 6. And we have amazing guests that come on and inspire everyone with their stories as well about overcoming. The Right to Ignite Women's Empowerment Retreats are going to be going after probably, I'm shooting for the first quarter, sometime in February or March. Hopefully, travel restrictions will be lifted and we'll be able to meet in person for those. The Toxic Dump Writing Guide is a guide to help you release your toxic shame and guilt. It's a timed writing exercise. You can get a free copy of that by going to Misty Layne at mistylayne.com and emailing the words toxic dump in the subject line. And I'll get that sent out
Awesome.
to you.
That's so great. We
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing that with the viewers. And um, I'm so glad that you came back and shared this story. I learned more about you. I'm just so impressed by what you're doing. I'm so proud of you. I know that you have had a major impact in my life. I'm on TV because you suggested it to me. I'm
Great.
just honored that you did. Now we've got great programs out there where we're trying to educate and inspire, and to help people be able to transform their lives, because we've both got stories that we share. It's about the fact that, yes, bad things can happen and that we create it, but when we take a hold of it and accountability and take some action, great things can happen. And when you put, and I feel I have to say this, for me, it was God. It was
Mhm.
trusting in God. It was turning it over and letting Him be my guide and me releasing my selfishness. And then it's an interesting story. I had to then get selfish for myself and do all this self introspection and dealing with stuff so that I could become selfless
Mhm.
and serve the community. Thank
It's
you
a
for so much
process.
that you do, Misty, for serving the community and inspiring others. We truly love you and appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just really hope that people that hear the story can be inspired to know that they're not alone and that they can overcome, no matter what they've done or been through, that they can overcome it.
You can overcome. It starts with wanting to have it, and then we just
Yes,
go
sir.
from there. Remember, folks, if you are happening to be watching this on Facebook or YouTube, do share it out to the friends and the groups that you belong to. We appreciate those that are watching on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple, and Android TV. We love you. Look up Misty's show. We're under positive vibrations. Is that correct there, Misty?
Yes.
On the E360 TV broadcast. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody. God bless you, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye. Thank
Bye now.
you.